Hello everyone, it's me again. Now I haven't uploaded for a little while, but I finally decided to put this video together yesterday, and today I'm gonna upload it. I've just been busy with work is all, but anyways, more to the point. The point of this video is to get on with a new and improved, what you'd call, build video for Skyrim AE, I suppose. It's not necessarily super beginner friendly to people, but I feel like it brings something new to the table for lore wise. This character is the Knight of Order, I guess I could call it, or maybe the peacemaker or something, just something along the lines of something like that. He's supposed to be a knight that not only is just out to bring peace and prosperity and to protect those people that need it the most, but to bring order, pure justice and order. He's not gonna walk up to you and, pray to the divines for help or, ask Stendar for mercy, but, he's completely different from a Vigilant of Stendar, we'll say. Just as a clarification over this build. So if you like this build, go ahead and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe you'll see another one soon. I'm hopefully going to be able to get to a second episode of Skyrim AE Dwarven Empress playthrough, which if you want to check that out, go ahead and check it out. Need to make a playlist of it or something, but you can watch them. I mean, they're pretty decent. But anyways, to get on more to the build. Now, as also a disclaimer before I get into the actual backstory, I like to mess around with the lore a little bit, just even if it doesn't necessarily make sense, it's not going to be like lore breaking, but it's going to be kind of tweaking it a little bit. Onto the story of the knight, we'll call him. The knight grew up in kind of a normal family. Well, normal as in the mother and father were just priests of the Chapel of the Divines and the Imperial City. They weren't necessarily famous or well-renowned, but they were known for being very open and welcoming, and they helped people through hard times with hard work. Like, the father would go and help people with menial tasks, like fixing something at their house, almost like a carpenter or some sort of maintenance person, if you will. And the mother was an excellent healer, not necessarily an expert, but she was adept at best. But they both used their skills for just whatever they could. They didn't necessarily make a huge impact, but they at least thought they were doing something. So when they had a kid, they thought they'd raise him with these same ideals, and that would be the knight. The knight was just a normal child up until about the age of 10. He stayed in the chapel, and he was, kind of raised to be a good boy, I guess you'd say. He didn't have too many friends. He was just kind of recluse, and he did talk to a few people, but he mainly also did a lot of work around the chapel himself. He would clean and sweep, dust, keep the altars nice and shiny, just menial things that no one else had time to do. Now, up until the age of 10, this is when something would happen to him that would change the course of his life forever. Him and his family, his mother and father, would end up being summoned to Kvatch for a sort of meeting with the people there at the chapel that apparently really needed the help. They were in need of some guidance. So, as sort of like a traveling monastery monk type work, they just traveled to the city. And this was the first time that the knight had really been outside of the city in almost all of his life. He had mostly seen the inside of the chapel and kind of stayed within the walls of the Imperial City, but other than that, he never knew what it really looked like to be outside. So this was a breath of fresh air for him. By the time they did get to Kvatch, though, it looked pretty normal. You never would have expected that the day would have gone any different from how it ended, if, you were looking at it at face value. It was just a nice, normal, sunny day. The birds were chirping, flowers were blooming, and, they made it into the chapel all right. When they got into the, Kvatch Chapel, they had been greeted by a group of people that were all waiting for them, expecting their arrival. And as they got there, they were just talking, and the mother and father of the knight were kind of just, seeing what it was that each of them needed. Well, until, I guess you'd say, there was something that did happen. Because after a few minutes of, seeing what everyone needed, there was this random person that came in, all cloaked in these strange red garbs, crimson red, at that. They had a hood over their head, so no one could see them, no one could look at their face, but they came in, and instantly, before anyone could react, he had started speaking to the people there about how the end is near, and Dagon will soon appear, and oblivion will break loose, and just going on and ranting. And at first everyone thought he was crazy, but then, before anyone could speak, he summoned 2 Dremora companions, demons that looked straight out of oblivion. And at this, they started slaughtering everyone in the chapel. The knight was just shocked, and so were his parents. They were sitting there, and one minute they were all talking, the next, now everyone's dead, and there's blood all over the walls. And then after that, they start hearing destruction rain down outside. They hear things crashing, buildings crumbling, and people screaming and yelling, and it was just a whole mess of chaos. And at this point, the knight's memories kind of blurred. Next thing he knows, he's in the Imperial City. He found his way back, and he was just hunched over in an alleyway, crying to himself. When then he realized he had blacked out. He sat there, and he wondered how he got there. Everything was such a blur, he could hardly remember anything. So this is where he would lose his purpose in life. His family they taught him on the path to being a chapel, priest, how to believe in the divines. But at this point, there was one thing that stuck to his head, and that was what his father said when he was protecting him against a Dremora while he was trying to escape. And that was that he should never fear the end, even when it seems like it's near. And that he should always stand still like he was, an unmoving mountain, or, something of the sort. But the knight never knew what this meant. He just had lost his family and his faith in the gods, because he would curse them every now and then, thinking why they could let this happen again. So, up until about the age of 18, when he was becoming a young adult, he did menial tasks such as being a stable boy, forge apprentice, or like a smithing apprentice. He even dabbled in the arts of some restoration, like his mother did. But nothing exactly stuck to him, although he did learn a few tips and tricks on how to start some things off. Like, he knew how to make some iron equipment, like a shield, sword, and like a pair of gauntlets or something. And he knew how to make arrows and, fine point them. He knew how to somewhat cast some healing spells on others and himself. He learned a few things. He was starting to slowly get back to somewhat normal. Until, well, one day something else happened. He would meet knights that would come through town and would be wearing this strange armament. It was all regal looking with a red crest on it, and it had a shield that matched the same, and there was a couple others that were following him that had lighter equipment. They each looked different, having different things. One of them had a great sword and less armor. One of them had more armor and that was heavy, and another one had just as much armor but was light, and they each were just unique. And this caught the knight's eye because he knew instantly they were some sort of religious warriors. They had to be. So he kind of followed them through town. Most people would have just batted an eye and looked the other way, but this was a bit different because the knight kind of was curious as to why these people were just walking through town and no one questioned. So eventually he came up to him when they stopped at a shop, and he asked, "Who are you people? I've seen you walking through town, and I just instantly had to, take a second glance, and I started wondering." Well, the main knight, or at least that's what the knight could think of, that's what he thought. The main knight replied, "We are Knights of the Nine. We are a religious faction that are here to help aid in the Oblivion crisis. In these rough times, they were there to help in the Oblivion crisis, since the Oblivion crisis had already been over with by the time he was 18, of course. We were here to help aid in the Oblivion crisis, and we only thought that, our skills could still be put to the use in desperate times." Well, this is what caught the knight's attention, and he instantly thought, "Oh, I want to be a part of these people. I want to train under them. They seem to have a purpose in life. They seem to know what they want to do." So he decides to go and train with them, and long story short, he trains with them for a couple years because, they accept him, and he now has renewed faith in the Nine Divines, and he's helping people at a more serious level with sword and shield instead of prayer and faith. But eventually, one day, their order ended up burning down. People would disband, and eventually then they would get targeted and attacked, and one day more cultists came up, and of course they were just some Dremora cultists. Couldn't say if it was for Mehrunes Dagon or whatnot, but they came and burned the whole place to the ground. They ransacked it and completely destroyed it, and in all this fire and fury, each person that had been murdered besides the Knight of Order was praying secretly in their head that there would be some sort of god that would help them, like Akatosh, RK, Kine, any of them. But none of them responded or even answered their prayer. This is what brought the Knight of Order to think more and more on this whole ordeal, how every time he thought the gods would help, they wouldn't. The gods that he believed would help. And the only one that even had an ounce of respect for was Akatosh, when he literally saved the entire realm of Nirn from Mehrunes Dagon's fury. This led the the Knight of Order to kind of stand and watch and wait, and he just, for a few more years, he would be even more lost and confused. Well, by the age of 22, he would come to a real realization. He was walking around the Imperial City, just wondering what would happen, what he would do, just still losing purpose, but this time not ever believing in the gods again. That's when the Shivering Isles would appear in, Cyrodiil, a portal right outside the Imperial City, directly to a Daedra god's realm. This would really resonate with the Knight of Order, because he thought that if no one else was going to solve this problem, he would. So, he walked right up in there. He just walked through the portal, although he was questioned by a very weird man who claimed to be the assistant to Sheogorath, which, why would a Daedric god need an assistant in the first place? But, doesn't matter to the knight as of right now. He continues on, he goes forwards, and he then would end up in the Shivering Isles, where he would explore for a little bit. He was somewhat fascinated by how chaotic this world looked. It was pretty weird, but, he couldn't necessarily be too shocked. I mean, it is a Daedric god's plane of, existence after all. So, after a few days of, or at least what he thought was a few days of traveling, he ends up coming across this city. Of course, after going past the Flesh Atronach, which, at this point, the Knight of Order was very skilled with blades and, any type of, combat. He was able to kind of get around it. Sure, it was pretty difficult, but he still managed. He gets to the other side in the Shivering Isles, and what happens there is, what happens to be there is, more open land, and a city. He goes into the city, he starts meeting these people, and eventually kind of stays here. It's, at first it's all fine and normal and dandy. It's probably a few days he was kind of going around this place, meeting things and wondering where the threat is. There's no Daedra willing to haunt the world or destroy it or anything like that. It's just normal. Like, they're all living their own existence. Sure, they're all crazy, but they're living their own existence. And so, eventually, of course, we all know how the Shivering Isles ended, and that was by the Grey March with Jiggalag appearing. This would truly open up the eyes of the Knight of Order. This is what gave the Knight of Order his title. He saw Jiggalag walking through just wherever he was. People were afraid and terrified, and it's not like he was evil in any way. He was trying to bring peace to all this chaos, and that's what's kind of funny in the end. The way the Knight of Order found out his name was from people screaming and yelling, "Run, it's Jiggalag, he's bringing the Grey March with him," and so on and so forth. Now, in all this chaos, the Knight of Order completely forgot that he was kind of caught up in it all, and he ended up getting knocked on the back of the head and blacked out. When he reawoke, though, he was outside. He wasn't inside the portal anymore, and he was kind of stuck there. It was funny to think that out of all this time, the thing he really needed to look forward to for, peace, prosperity, order, and faith was Jiggalag of all things. A Daedric god. Now, how the Knight of Order ended up in Skyrim was due to an accident that he had. He was trying to recreate a portal to get back into the Shivering Isles because he desperately wanted to see Jiggalag again, or at least trying to get into a plane of existence with Jiggalag, something, so he could maybe talk to him or see what it was. He's done a bunch of research on him, so he basically knows that Jiggalag is a Daedric god of order, but not many people really believe in him these days because he doesn't necessarily have any shrines, and he's mainly just attached to Sheogorath, after all. It's just a thing that happens. So this accident, we'll say, that happened was that he kind of somewhat made a portal, but the portal didn't necessarily make him go through the plane of existence to oblivion. It was more a portal that kind of threw him forwards in time and made him kind of like stasis in like a stasis moment or something, where he was just stuck, like frozen almost in time, but his mind was wandering, being able to move around the world, almost like out of body experience, I guess you could say. All in all, whatever way he got to Skyrim, he just got to Skyrim, whether it be what you guys come up with, or if you use the story. Like I said, that is the end of his backstory. Now that we've gotten that, that's just the backstory that I think makes more sense. Of course, needs a few more tweaks and stuff, but no big deal. Basically, what would happen is this Knight of Order would get to Skyrim somehow, whether you guys come up with something. He'd find out he's Dragonborn, whether it's through natural means, like he got caught at Helgen and he ran away, like vanilla game, or he got captured, like through other means, modding or whatever. But the whole main purpose is that he would go through a bunch of trials and tribulations with the true 9 divines, and then realize that the Daedric Prince had it right all along. So things that he would do: he would join the companions for getting better skills. He would join maybe the Mages College if you guys feel like that, just for the restoration. But if not, no big deal, because you can just use the Bow of Ariel later on. He would do the Dawn Guard first, I believe, or depending on how you want to roleplay, you could say that he got to Skyrim first a few years before the dragon thing, which I usually like to do, just so that way it seems like you can do a few more things instead of instantly, oh, well, you have a bit more freedom to kind of roam around and collect a few things before you start actually playing the character. But that might just be me. You would kill the Dark Brotherhood. You would do the Meridia quest line, or not quest line, but quest. You would go and get, if you have the special edition or the anniversary edition, you can use the Sword of Jiggalag. But if not, then I guess you could just use the Meridia's weapon, saying that, oh, he couldn't find a better sword to bring peace and order than a Daedric weapon, of course. But if you had it, you could say it would be like a godsend that he found it. Literally a godsend. Other than that, when he does find out he's Dragonborn, he would still sort of believe in Akatosh, knowing that Akatosh probably gave this power to him, and that Akatosh, he'd believe in Akatosh. So I guess you could say his beliefs are he wants to bring peace, order, justice, and he would do that by any means. His skills would be, of course, two-handed, heavy armor, enchanting, smithing, and all of that. Restoration, of course, or archery, whichever one. Doesn't necessarily matter. It just matters how you play him, and the main theme of it is making a knight that is a lot more harsh and stoic, and is a lot more hard, basically. Just stronger for, his beliefs, and he'll stop anyone that gets in the way of threatening order, such as dragons. So, but the outfit that I went with, my personal, choice, is, of course, with the anniversary edition stuff, I chose the steel or the silver armor, boots, and steel soldier gauntlets and helmet. But anyways, you can obviously see that. I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope it was a bit more, made more sense. Like I said, I just like to tell you guys how I played it. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you can leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time for a bit of a better build. I'm going to try and get better at these. Have a good rest of your day.